Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars and you're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, you'll consider subscribing because hey, subscribing is free. Well, at least sort of. What I'm going to be doing today is gluing a book-matched black poisonwood or Chechen top onto my mahogany body blank. So let me bring you in a little closer and we'll get started. Now in the last episode, I think I had mentioned that in this episode, I was going to glue the tops on and then I was going to join the two halves together. But then I remembered this is going to be a neck through guitar. So there's no reason to be gluing the two halves together. Instead, each half will be glued to the side of the neck. And as you recall, where it's going to join is a wavy surface. So that's going to be really interesting. But what I'm going to do today is glue the top onto this. I'm going to show you the method that I use. It's really pretty simple. All you need is some wood glue, and I'm just using Titebond Original. That works quite well. And you'll need a whole bunch of clamps, and I'm just using these ratchet clamps, but you can also use C-clamps, you know, any sort of clamp that will hold the top on, as you'll see in a minute. And then I'm using this workbench. It's a Black & Decker Workmate. There are a bunch of different types of benches like this that have clamping tops, and that's what I use for clamping. So you'll see how that works here in a second. Now the first thing I've got to do before I start to glue it down is I got to make sure I have the wood oriented correctly. Now this black poison wood is book matched. I processed this myself from a big block of wood and ran it through the planer to get both surfaces flat. But I want to make sure that I'm joining, you know, that it's going to be oriented correctly. They're not actually going to be glued together. Like I said, it's going to be glued on the edges of the neck blank, but I want to make sure that the grain is running in the direction that I want it to. And of course, that's purely aesthetic. Same thing with the mahogany back of the body. And typically what I'll do is I like to make sure that the grain on the edges, the grain on one side is in opposition to the grain on the other side. And that's kind of hard to do sometimes because when you cut it with a saw, a table saw or a circular saw, it can be difficult to see the grain. But you got to really look closely. And I like to make sure that it's in opposition because I just think it looks nice. There's no, you know, hard, fast rule that you have to do it that way, but I do think it looks good when you do. So the first thing I need to do is I need to apply glue to the surface of the wood in preparation for gluing down the tops. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is start to apply the glue, and I'm going to spread it around once I have enough on here with just this cheapo plastic credit card. I get these in the mail all the time. They're like gift cards and stuff like that, stuff that I never actually use. And I hope I have enough glue here. Now, one thing I should mention is wood glue doesn't like cold temperatures, especially Titebond Original. Aliphatic wood glues tend to break down when you try to glue pieces together if the temperature is below, say, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So I always try to make sure that the environment I'm working in has a bit of a warmer temperature. And you know, you may find yourself in a situation where it's colder than that, but if you can bring the pieces into a room which has a warmer temperature, say above 65 degrees, you'll be safe. If it's below that, you run the risk of the glue not forming the strongest bond that it's capable of. I want to make sure that these edges are lined up pretty accurately. It doesn't have to be absolutely precise because this is all going to be milled away anyways. Then what I'll do is I'll take a clamp and I will start to gradually clamp it. Wood glue is really slippery, as you know, so you don't want to apply too much clamping pressure or it will start to slip and slide on you. All right, so what I'll do now is let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes, which will be long enough for the glue around the edges here to tack up. Well, as you can see, I've removed the clamps and the blank from the workbench. And this was actually clamped up about 2 days ago. And the thing about wood glue is it can take a long time to dry. Type Bond recommends that you clamp pieces for at least 30 minutes. And typically I'll let it clamp up for a couple of hours. I might even let it sit overnight. It's not going to hurt anything. But the actual tack will form within about 30 minutes to an hour. And that tack will remain. It's not going to diminish or increase. It's going to just pretty much stay the same. However, if I was to take a chisel and pry off this top 2 days later, you would notice that the glue around the edges is dry, but in the center, it's still wet because it can take that long over a wide expanse like this for that glue in the center to fully dry. I could continue working with this even though it might still be wet here in the center because the clamping is done. The tack and the bond has been formed. However, it's in the center that it hasn't fully developed. But I would be safe to continue working. Since I'm not in a rush, I'm going to let it sit for probably about a week before I continue on with the next step in the process. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next episode. I'm going to explain how I prepare the blanks, the body, the neck, and the fretboard to be carved on my CNC machine. So be sure to check that out. As always, though, I hope you found this episode to be informative and educational and maybe entertaining. If so, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, again, welcome. I hope that you'll consider subscribing because it's free. And until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back.